Law, Leather, and Firelight. Come February of 1888, Pineville looked about like you'd expect a little Ozark town to look in the dead of winter. Folks had that pinched look about them, cheeks as red as apples, hands cracked at the knuckles, boots caked with mud from morning till night. McDonald County didn't always get the deep snows like up north, but Lord, it got cold enough, the kind of damp cold that works its way right through your coat and sets up camp. Now sitting behind the courthouse square was what everybody called the old jail, though truth be told, nobody could remember it ever being new. It was a squat log building that looked more fit for smoking hams than holding prisoners. The door sat up high, so you practically had to hoist a fellow up and in like a feed sack. The floor was something to behold, 3 whole layers of hewn logs laid crossways and fitted tighter than a prim and proper hatband. You'd have thought nothing short of dynamite could breach it. Inside that odd little jail were 3 prisoners, and the one everybody knew was Old Man Bird. If he had a Christian name, folks had either forgotten it or didn't care to use it. Bird was what you might call a habitual guest of the law, the sort who borrowed things without asking and helped himself to what wasn't his. This particular visit came courtesy of some missing chickens and geese, which might not sound like much, but in February, when the smokehouse was running low, stealing poultry was about as welcome as a skunk at a church picnic. Bird sat in that jail with his 2 fellow lodgers, and Pineville went about its business, chopping wood, feeding stock, and arguing politics like always. Everything rolled along just fine, until it didn't. Nobody ever did figure out, straight and honest, how that fire got started. All folks knew was that it somehow got down into the cracks of that thick floor. Once fire finds a seam, you might as well be fighting the devil himself. You can throw water till your arms fall off, and that fire will just keep gnawing away underneath where you can't reach it. The floor was too heavy to tear up quickly, and that spelled trouble. When word got out, well, Pineville emptied out faster than a church after a long sermon. Men came running from every direction, some still in barn clothes, some in their shirt sleeves despite the cold. Buckets flew hand to hand. Water got hauled until fingers went numb. By all accounts, just about every man in town who could carry a bucket took his turn fighting that stubborn fire. Now, they pulled the prisoners out, because even a town full of mad folks doesn't want to burn a man alive, thief or not. Bird and the others got moved to the courthouse, where they stood at the windows watching the whole show, smoke rolling and men slipping around in the mud below. That's when things got sticky. The men outside were already worn to a frazzle, soaked through, and none too happy about how that fire kept gaining ground. Then somebody spotted the prisoners up there in the courthouse windows, and it looked like they were laughing or carrying on. Might have been nothing, just a grin or a thoughtless comment, but to men who'd been hauling water since sunup, it felt like those prisoners were having themselves a good time at everyone else's expense. Word got around quickly, as it tends to do, that the prisoners had set the fire themselves, figuring to burn their way to freedom. Folks believed it easy enough, because belief comes cheap when you're already hot under the collar. By nightfall, they'd whipped that fire, but the town was still simmering, and wet, angry men are about as dangerous as cornered cats. The 3 prisoners were kept in the courthouse under Constable J.F. Fulkerson's watch. He was law in the local sense, wore a badge and all, but he was also somebody's neighbor, somebody's cousin, somebody who owed somebody money, which made his authority about as solid as creek ice in March. Later that night, voices called up the stairs saying Jailer Kenny wanted to speak with Fulkerson downstairs. When the constable opened the door, he got grabbed and held right there. Other men rushed upstairs and hauled the prisoners out of their beds and into the dark. They marched them up a ridge northwest of town, far enough from the lamplight to do what they meant to do without folks seeing. Fulkerson managed to fire his pistol a few times to raise an alarm, but those who heard either figured the prisoners were escaping or decided it wasn't their concern. Kenny tried to follow but missed the way in the dark and ran himself out of breath. Up on that ridge, with the cold biting and the ground slick, those prisoners figured their number was up. Fears got a particular sound to it, and you could hear it in how they breathed. Old Man Bird spoke up then, his voice steady as Sunday morning. He asked the men if they knew there was a hell. One fellow answered that yes, he knew all about hell, and they were fixing to give Bird a sample. Somebody asked if Bird had ever been whipped. Bird said he had, once before, for taking land that wasn't his. They told him he'd be whipped again, this time for taking a goose that wasn't his. They tied him to a tree and laid the leather on him good. left his shirt on, but it was torn to ribbons by the time they finished, and his back was a bloody mess. One of the other prisoners took a lick or two. The third one got off with a warning to mind his ways. Then they cut them loose and told them to make themselves scarce. Fulkerson got turned loose too, sent back to town. A lawman who'd just learned his badge didn't count for much against a crowd of riled-up neighbors. The three men made their way to W.R. Barnes's place, and he gave them shoes. From there, they went to a J. Watkins, who gave them matches and pointed out an empty house where they might warm up. They couldn't find it in the dark, and ended up building a fire in the woods, shivering through till morning. Come daylight, they went back to Watkins, and he fed them breakfast. Old Man Bird swore up and down he'd get revenge, but nothing ever came of it. He hung around the county a while, grousing and making threats, but times got a way of smoothing over even the roughest feelings. There was talk later of investigations and grand juries, the law trying to get its legs back under it, but nobody knew anything or would admit to knowing, and pretty soon the whole business faded like morning fog. Some folks remembered that night as a lesson about thieves. Others saw it as a warning about what happens when a crowd gets worked up. However, the truth sat somewhere in between, lit by firelight, marked by leather, and watched over by a law that turned out to be thinner than anybody wanted to admit. That night held two fires, you might say. One burned wood and logs till the jail was gone. The other burned in men's chests, hotter and harder to put out. The first fire took a building. The second one crossed a line and left a mark that lasted long after the ashes cooled.